coming up on Garden Talk.
I usually start by going around certain areas on Google Maps when I want to find a new spot to grow outside. Cut it in a circle, so I cleanse in the middle, and then I plant the medical plants in there, so to speak, and then I try to go out through the bushes. So I just have a little bit of a spot. I think that's horrible. If you're gonna grow outside, I think you have to be responsible, of course, and don't pollute the nature. Be a grown-up, take your shit with you and or put it in a trash bag nearby. Choose often plants that are pretty sturdy, that are known for they can handle these type of not optimal conditions. Try to keep it pretty minimalistic. Take your shit with you. Be responsible, and that's my advice.
What's up, everybody? For you that don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and you're tuned into the Garden Talk podcast. This is episode number 63. In this episode, I interview Macki. He's been gardening for 6 years and is a guerrilla grower. In this episode, he talks about the many stealth practices that he needs to do in order to grow his plants without anybody knowing. Thanks to all of you who support this podcast through Patreon. If you'd like to support, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Mr. Grow It. Before we get into it, I want to acknowledge that one of my goals for this podcast is to bring zero cost for information about gardening, all plants, to the general public. That being said, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's episode who helped make that goal possible. Thanks to Spider Farmer for being a sponsor. A new grow light they released here in 2022 is the SE1000W. This was designed specifically for those of you who run CO2 in your grow space and really want to maximize the light intensity. It has a 10-bar design for an even light spread, pulls 1000 watts from the wall, and comes in at 2.9 micromoles per joule efficacy. The recommended coverage area is 4 feet by 4 feet or 5 feet by 5 feet. Use discount code MrGrowIt5 to save on all Spider Farmer products, and I'll leave a link in the video description section below. Shout out to Gorilla Grow Tent for sponsoring this episode. They have two different size clone tents, 18 inches and 24 inches. The 18-inch clone tent is designed to fit standard size seedling trays. The 24-inch tent, which is the one that they sent me, is designed to fit the Super Cloner 50 or two standard size seedling trays. They also have a clone tent fan and filter, which is designed to fit perfectly in the rooftop micro mesh compartment of both the 18-inch and 24-inch tents. Check out their website at growstrongindustries.com and use discount code MrGrowIt for 15% off. AC Infinity is a sponsor of the podcast. Coupon code MrGrowIt will get you a discount on their products. I've been using their Cloudline T6 and T4 inline fans for several years now, and I absolutely love the automation built into them. On the inline fans controller, you can have set points for high and low temperature, as well as high and low humidity. This greatly helps control my indoor garden environment, so the temperature and humidity stays in the ideal ranges. I will leave a link to AC Infinity down in the description section below, and don't forget to use coupon code MrGrowIt for a discount on their products. And we are back. Welcome to the Garden Talk podcast. Today I am joined with Macki. How you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Today we're going to talk all about stealth growing. So you are a guerrilla grower, which is why you're hiding your identity right now. Guerrilla growing, for those that don't know, is someone who cultivates on land that they don't have the legal rights to cultivate on. So it could be private property, abandoned sites, areas that aren't being cared for, so on and so forth. In order to do that, you have to implement stealth processes, right? So that's what we're going to get into today. But first, how about an introduction? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into gardening?
Of course. I live in Scandinavia, and I've been gardening for pretty much all my grown-up life. I started my first grow when I was like 19. Now I'm over 30, so I've been growing on and off, and mostly outside, like guerrilla style. So I have a little bit of experience in the outside growing here in Scandinavia.
So just a quick disclaimer, we are not encouraging anybody to break the law. This episode is particular for those who want to implement stealth growing. Maybe you have family, friends, nosy neighbors that you don't want to know about your grow. So that being said, why not grow legally? Why do you have to grow illegally where you live?
Because it is how it is here in the Scandinavian countries with the regulation of the medical plants. You're not allowed to use it. You're not allowed to grow it or even have it on you. So and that's why I started to do this guerrilla type of growing, and for other reasons as well. But yeah, I think it's much better to do it yourself. You know what you get. You don't get contaminated products, and yeah, it's easier.
Yeah, we had a pre-meeting before we met today, and you had talked about contamination as well is a big deal
Yes.
out there. So,
Mm.
is there dispensaries that you can buy at, or is everything just black market out there?
Everything here is black market. It is very restricted. It's very high. You get very big problems if you use it in any way. So, and because the black market is so big here, you get really bad quality of products. So that's why I think a lot of people are starting to implement more guerrilla style of growing because they know what they get. And the black market is just like that. It's a black market, so they try to make the products way more and stuff like that, and get more money out of people who don't know anything about it. So it's a bad market here, I think, right now.
So I gotta imagine that guerrilla growing is very common out there. Is that right?
I think it's more common than people might know here in Scandinavian countries, especially in the summertime, because in the winter we can't grow here because the climate is so cold and bad. We have a little bit better summer, so you can grow in the summertime here.
Okay, that makes sense. So, what is your overall style of gardening? Are you doing indoors, outdoors? Are you in soil or cocoa, organic, synthetic? What's your style?
Yeah. If we're starting with medium, I'm usually growing in soil, just mixing soil and peat and perlite and also some cocoa. I have a little bit of blend, but I don't use only cocoa or only soil, so I mix a little bit of both. But I never do hydro. I don't know why. I just feel more comfortable to doing it in soil. And regarding my grow style, I grow both indoors and outdoors. Now in the winter time, winter months when it's pretty cold here, I grow indoors, of course. And then in mid-May, I starting the veg, the plants that I'm gonna put out in the summer months. So I do both.
Okay, so you're vegging the plants starting in May, and then when do you actually bring them outdoors and plant them outdoors?
I usually veg them for 4 or 5 weeks, right before the autoflowers go into flowering. So they are pretty sturdy and they can handle some hard winds here. So then I put them out. So I veg around 8 to 10 plants in the mid of May, and then I put out them in mid June, and then they get done in like the end of July approximately, and then I have already pre-vegged another 10 flowers or 10 medical plants, and then I put them out. So
Okay, so you're doing multiple cycles a year, and you mentioned autoflowers. Are you doing, are all the plants autoflowers?
yeah, I usually do autoflowers now because the summers here are pretty short and the weather is not so stable here in the Scandinavian countries. So autoflowers, I think, is the best bet if you get some quality autoflowers that could handle these temperature changes. And there's some Scandinavian companies like Northern Seeds that have great autoflowers. So they cultivated for these type of environments, so they're perfect.
Okay, so you mentioned you're vegging indoors for about 5, 6 weeks, or 4 or 5 weeks. So the plants are already flowering when you bring them into outdoors. Then they're going the remainder of their life. That's typically what, like another 5, 6 weeks until you
Yeah.
harvest. And you already have other plants being started indoors at the same time. And so once those outdoor plants are harvested, you're bringing those indoor plants that you have going at 4 or 5 weeks outdoors. So you're getting another cycle
Yeah,
in within the matter of just a couple months there between harvests. Is that right?
exactly. So I try to get at least two cycles in one summer, so around 20 plants.
Talking about a place to grow, how do you go
Mm.
about determining a good piece of land or a spot to grow in?
I usually start by going around certain areas on Google Maps first of all, when I want to find a new spot to grow outside. And I go about it checking the place, and then I see if it's pretty close to me, so I can either walk there or take my bike and get a backpack with water and nutrition so I can feed the plants when they need water. And then I go and scout the place and see if there is little activity around there, not many people, and of course I don't want any houses close by so people can see from inside of their houses out and see me when I go in and out of the area that I pick. And yeah, then I just check the area, see how it is with the coverage of bushes and stuff like that. It's hidden, all that stuff.
So how much sunlight are you typically looking for that spot to be able to get per day?
Yeah, I don't have exactly. I don't really count the hours, but I think at least like 6 hours. I think it's 6, 7 hours. I think it's minimum here. But I just try to see how the sun goes when I'm standing at the growing spot outside. See, so there's not big trees that cover the sun, so they mostly get sun. At least half day.
And during the time outdoors, we're talking June, July, August.
Yeah.
What is the temperature and humidity outdoors in the area where you live, or the area where you plant? Sorry.
Yeah, it's getting, the humidity is rising from month to month, but in the middle of the summer it's around 50. Could be more if it's really, really humid here and really, really hot temperatures. In a really high summer day, it could, of course, go up to 60. Around 45 to 50, I think it's on a regular summer day here.
Are you doing anything to camouflage the grow at all so that nobody can see it?
I usually try to find a spot that is covered with not big trees, but a little bit of bushy, like a circled area. Then I get in, crawling like 2-3 meters in, and then I cut it like in a circle. So I cleanse in the middle, and then I plant the medical plants in there, so to speak, and then I try to go out through the bushes again. So I just have a little bit of a little bit of a spot where I can have my plants in the middle, so people can see through the bushes just from above.
And I always imagine some people actually doing like booby traps too, going as far as like adding in traps in case anybody were to walk in that area. Are there any like booby traps you set up or anything to keep people away?
Maybe I should like bear traps and stuff, but I haven't I haven't done anything, and I think it's going pretty good so far. So.
Do you worry about the smell at all, right? So we know that these medicinal plants, they can certainly start to smell. That smell can drift over to other areas. Are you worried about the smell at all? Do you do anything about the smell or what?
I have actually haven't got any problem with the smell. You can choose a strain that is a pretty low odor strain, like for example the Northern Lights Auto. It's a good strain, because it doesn't smell so much if you are concerned about the smell outdoors. But where I usually have my medical plants, it is close to a bigger road, and there's a lot of cars and stuff like that. So it's a lot of stuff going on in the air. So it's pretty hard, and it's also pretty windy there. It's pretty hard for people to notice any smell there. So I haven't had any problems with that. But of course, it depends on where you put your plants and how the strain you choose, how much they smell. You're gonna look up the strain a little bit beforehand. Be cautious of where you plant it.
Okay, that makes sense. And then a problem that a lot of outdoor growers face is pollination. Have you had any issues with plants accidentally pollinating your plants at all?
Never actually. I don't know if that is just luck for me or what it is, but I've never had a problem with that when I'm growing outside. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Okay. And then as far as kind of going back to like the camouflage stuff and staying hidden, back in the day, we're talking 20 plus years ago in the States, there was huge crackdowns. There was helicopters flying all over the place. They were coming down on these grows. They were looking from above, coming down once they found these medicinal plants, chopping down plants, and really spending a lot of time, money on doing this process. Do you face any of that in your area? Are there always helicopters flying around, actively looking for guerrilla grows and taking plants down?
No, I never heard of anyone that get in trouble that way. You never hear any helicopters where I live here. It's not a big city where I live. It's a medium city in this case, one of the Scandinavian countries, and we don't have these type of resources here. I feel that they were gonna do these type of big operations, just looking for medical plants and stuff like that. So I've never heard of anything about that, matter. So I think you're totally cool. You don't have to worry about that. Of course, if you have a very, very big scale operations outside with like 500 to 1,000 plants, maybe you got to be a little bit more cautious, of course. But if you have like 10, 20, something like that, I don't think you have to worry about a thing.
That makes sense. So you're doing it on a little bit smaller of a scale than some of the other guerrilla growers are, right? So you said around 10 plants at a time. So
yeah, 10, approximately 10, 15 sometimes. It depends a little bit about how the place is looking, where I'm gonna set them, if it's big enough or how much can they handle and stuff like that. So
do you grow in the same spot year after year, or are you switching up locations every year?
I usually switch up locations because just for having a little bit more caution, and so don't people you know notice me going there every summer and the same time, and just to try to be a little bit more low key and under the radar. Try to switch it up and try different places, try different spots, see which spot is best. How the plants feel, stuff like that.
So you do your initial investigation, I guess we call it, right? Your initial searching for a piece of land. I'm assuming you're doing that in May or maybe early June, maybe a week or so before you plant from indoors. Your indoor plants plant them outdoors. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
And at that point, your autoflowers, you said they're week five ish. They're pretty decent size, I would imagine. How are you bringing the plants into the location without getting spotted?
That's a good question. I usually take like bigger plastic bags that I just can just carry, and then I either go with my car and just put it in the back seat of my car, just go back and forth a couple of times in hours that I know not a lot of people are going there. So I try to make it as quick as possible, of course, and not be in the location for too long. So people starting wondering what the guy is doing in the bushes there. That's could be a little bit weird. But just big plastic bags, depending on how big the plants are. I can have some, what do you call it? Like laundry bags. They're pretty high sometimes. Some, IKEA bags, stuff like that. So depends on the height of the plants. But I'm growing usually autoflowers, and they don't get so tall. So I usually don't have mega bags. When I put them out.
Okay, so you get the plants to the location, and then are you keeping plants in containers at that time, or are you doing the transplanting process to where you're digging down into the ground and then transplanting from the containers and planting into the ground?
Last year, I just put the plastic containers outside, just on the ground, just for easy, because it was a pretty hidden location that was. I didn't have to grow them down in the ground, to make it more stealth. So I, didn't, start to dig and put soil in ground, stuff like that. So it depends a little bit how the location is looking. If I want to be more stealth, and if people can, see through it and maybe watch plants or see that something's going on, maybe I dig them down. But this year I'm finding a good location right now, and I think I'm just going to put the containers out on the ground, so make it easier for myself.
Do you do anything for hardening off? And for those that don't know what hardening off is, it's doing things to acclimate your plants that you started indoors to the outdoor environment? Are you doing anything for hardening off of the plants?
And mostly not, but it depends a little bit on the weather here. If I have, if it's starting to be pretty good weather a couple of weeks before I put them out, sometimes I can just put it on my balcony, some of those plants, if it is really great weather. So make them accustomed to the outside climate a little bit more and the wind and stuff like that. But I usually don't think about that as much. I choose often plants that are pretty sturdy, that are known for, they can handle these type of not optimal conditions that is here in where I live. So I haven't had any problems with that to harden them and stuff like that. I think they are pretty good, when they're ready, and they could handle the switch from inside to outdoors pretty good, I think so.
Okay, and then once you get to the location, you have your plants there. How many trips back and forth are you typically doing per week in order to, get in there with, maybe you're bringing in equipment or tools, fertilizer, watering the plants? Can you talk to us about all of that?
Yeah, first time I get there, I just putting the plants there, don't do anything, and then I get out as quick as possible. Then I usually wait for approximately 5 days before I go there. So maximum once a week, I go to the spot and just water them. I have bottles in my backpack, 2-liter bottles, pre-filled, pre-fertilized. Everything is ready, so I can just take them off, out of my backpack and just splash it on the medical plants, as quickly as possible, and then I'm out again. So I don't like lurk around in the spot too long. I just do what I have to, and then I get out of there as quickly as possible. So every 5 days, I would say, I go to the spot in the summertime. But if it is a really warm summer and the plants, of course, need more water, I might get there every third day or something like that, depending on the weather, of course.
And then what are you using for fertilizer?
I usually just use one fertilizer. It's a bloom fertilizer. It's nothing special. It's a brand from here. It's a local brand. So I can't give any recommendations, but it has everything you need, and I don't use that before I think it's the 4th or 5th week. So after 5 weeks, I starting to use that on the plants, but not before. I don't think they need it, especially autoflowers. They're pretty fragile, easy to over-fertilize these type of plants. So I use a synthetic fertilizer when they're starting to bloom, usually when I put them out the first week, and then I use it every watering till they're ready to harvest, basically. So.
And now are you checking like a ppm or an EC, or are you ignoring those things and just kind of doing the every week feeding every 5 days or whatever, how often you go to the site?
Yeah, I don't check anything about that, not pH, nothing like that. I just try to keep it as simple as possible, just taking the recommendations on the bottle that I know they can handle. I've tried it before, of course, on the strain before, so I know I don't over-fertilize, so I know my measurements, how much they need and how much they can take. And then I just mix it up with water, and then I'm out doing the thing. I don't use any boosters or any stuff like that. I just have a simple, good fertilizer for the bloom stage that I think works really good for me. I use it even indoors as well. And, it's pretty simple, but it works, I don't think you have to complicate it so much, if you have a good, ground fertilizer, basic fertilizer.
So I can imagine that you've brought in the nutrients there, and you just keep the nutrient bottles there on site. And so every 5 days, you're just using the bottles that you've left there at that spot. The water, I'm still trying to wrap my head around, because you said you've gotten 10 plants at a time. It seems like a lot of water would need to be brought in. Are you doing multiple trips for water?
I usually just do one trip. I just fill, but I don't water them that much. I give them maybe like 50 centiliters, 60 centiliters water to each plant, so I don't overwater them. I'm pretty cautious with how much I water them. I think for a 7 to 9 liter container that I usually use for these autoflowers, they don't really need that much, and I don't try to flush them too much so they can hold the nutrients in the container, so I don't flush them up every time. and you just have to use even more nutrients. So I usually have a lot of 2 liter bags, have a big backpack, just pressing them down. I pre-fill it back home, so I don't have any nutrients at the spots. So I just pre-fill everything at home, put it in my backpack, just go with my bike or my car sometimes, but usually my bike early in the morning, water them, and then it's done for 5 days usually. So.
Okay, and then you said you don't do any type of flushing. You like to just water in, so there's really no runoff happening for the entire grow. Now, what about at the end of the grow before harvest? A common technique that we know of is flushing, right? They'll flush the nutrients out of the medium in order to kind of force that senescence to happen within the plants. Are you doing a flush before harvesting?
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of people do that, but I've also heard that it doesn't make any sense to the plants if you flush or not. That's what I've heard. Like later studies now that recently came out from like really good growers. So I never flush. I don't care about that. Maybe you should, maybe you don't. I don't know. I haven't heard anyone that could tell the difference from a plant that's been flushed and from one that haven't been flushed. But I don't know. It's up to each person to know if they want flush or not. But I usually don't care about that.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think it's pretty good that you don't flush. The reason why is one thing that's very common with guerrilla growing is you hear about people using synthetic nutrients outdoors, flushing their plants, runoff of phosphorus and nitrogen going into the local streams close by, and then toxic algae blooms occurring. It's a huge problem around the world actually, and it's happening due to these fertilizers, overuse of fertilizers. So you kind of getting into a more of a precision thing, not doing the runoff. It's really better for the environment, right? You're not having those nutrients run off and cause issues.
Yeah, exactly. Phosphorus is yeah, as you said, phosphorus is horrible to get down in the ground, of course, as well. So.
And then another thing you often see is in guerrilla grows is trash being left around. And now this is the mainstream media we're talking about. So they're gonna film guerrilla grows. They're gonna focus on the trash left over. What's your stance on that? And you can be honest, are you leaving the trash hanging around? Are you collecting the trash? Or
No, no, of course, I think that's horrible. If you're gonna grow outside, I think you have to be responsible, of course, and don't pollute the nature, and be a grown up, take your shit with you and or put it in a trash bag nearby. I try to just take every bottle and stuff like that with me when I go home again, just put it in my backpack and then I'm going off, So it's not that I stay at the spot for so long, so I just have my water bottles, I water, then I put them down back in my backpack, and then I'm out of there again, so I don't have like basically anything around there laying around, It's just the plants who stand there.
you would think that would be a tip to stay stealth, right? Is to remove the trash, because if people see the trash, people walk by the area, they see the trash, that's gonna attract some eyes towards that way. So
Precis. So try to keep it pretty minimalistic. Take your shit with you, and be responsible. And that's my advice.
how do you avoid getting spotted? I mean, you're going there pretty frequently, right? Every 5 days or so, you're going there. How do you avoid getting spotted? Are you going at a certain time of the day where maybe there's less population around the area? Or have you ever gotten spotted before?
Yeah, I try to go, of course, at times where I know that a lot of people are either at work or sleeping. So, like 5 in the morning, 4:30, sometimes in the summertime, I think it's a good time to go there if you're gonna water. And of course, I don't pick a spot that there is a lot of houses nearby, but there are people, of course, walking that could see you. So you gotta choose to be there at certain times. You have to like put your alarm maybe early in the morning to minimize the risk of someone seeing you at the spot, or maybe in the middle of the night. But I think it's better in the early morning to do it, so you can see where your plants are.
All right. You did mention a somewhat high of a humidity early on in this episode. At high humidities, you're at risk for things, so you're at risk at bud rot, mold, powdery mildew. Are you facing any of those issues at all? Has that happened to you at all?
Yeah, it's happened a little bit, but it's not a whole plant. Not a whole plant. I had some buds that were affected last year, and I just cut them off and just threw them away, of course. But yeah, you can't really do anything about it. You know, you have to hope that everything is going pretty good and that summer is pretty windy, but also get a lot of sunshine, so gets the air circulation around the medical plants that you have planted outside. And also, maybe you can choose a location that is not too windy, of course, but have a little bit of a air circulation, so it's not so closed off that they can't like breathe, and there's too heavy bushes or trees around, so they get suffocated basically. But yeah, it's I think it's bigger problem inside with bad ventilation that is outside, depending on the weather, of course. But I think they're gonna be fine.
So that's one problem. The other problem would be very common outdoors is pests. What do you do in order to prevent pests from invading your grow outdoors?
Yeah, that's a good question. I usually put this copper tape around the stem of the plants because we have a lot of problem with snails here that likes to chew on the medical plants. So I usually just take a PET bottle, like a 50 centiliter cola bottle or something like that, cut it off, like this big. So I just cut off a bit of the bottle in a circle, and then I just put it around the stem in the lower part, and then I take the copper band around, and then I put it on all the plants so they can't like climb up on the stem and chew on your plants, you know. So that's basically the one thing I always do, and it helps a little bit. But of course, you can't do everything, and I don't want to spend too much of money on certain things and pest control and yada yada. So that's the only thing I do. It's going pretty good actually.
And now, talking about plant training, I'll flip it up a little bit. Do you do any type of training at all in plants, whether it be any low stress training, topping, super cropping, fimming, any of the training techniques at all?
Yeah, I usually did more back in the day with the techniques, but I have noticed that if you, I don't know if this is, of course, some plants can handle it better than others, but if you, for example, film or top some autoflowers, okay, they get more branches, they get more bud sites, and of course, but sometimes I feel that the buds are too like they're not so hard. What do you call it in English?
Dense,
They're
not so
very
dense.
not so dense exactly. So the less you do to stress the plant, I think that's better. Of course, you get a little bit less of outcome, so to say, when they're ready. But yeah, maybe just some filming. Sometimes I do, but I don't really low stress the plants I put out. Uh, Maybe just filming, something like that, something easy. I don't want to spend too much time on it, you know, to stress train them.
How big are these plants actually getting before you, like when you harvest, how big are the plants?
Yeah, as you know, autoflowers don't grow as big as photoperiod plants, so they're not huge monsters, but of course they grow a little bit bigger outside than indoors. So around 120 to 1.5 meters, I think it's could be approximately how big they get outside, what I've seen from my grows at least. But of course you can grow bigger autoflowers and or smaller as well, but around there.
And then so you make that decision to harvest the plants. Are you harvesting all the plants at the same time and then doing trips back and forth on the same day in order to remove the plants from the site?
I try to harvest the same day, actually. Hopefully, of course, they're the same strain, but of course, they can differentiate how long in the development the plants are. But I usually try to harvest the same day or each other day to minimize me going front and back all the time. You know, it maximizes the potential that someone might see me. You know, so I don't want to do that. And then I just harvest them every plants in one day, hopefully, and then I put them down in like black sacks, plastic bags, bigger plastic bags. Then I get out of there, and then I usually wait some days, and then I take the plastic containers with me again. So I just clean the spot a couple of days later.
All right, so then you bring them back to your home, you let them dry.
Exactly.
What do you typically do for drying conditions?
I usually have a spare room where I live, and then I have my window there on a little bit half open. So and then I hang it just straight down. I have for the what do you call it? The curtain. There's a pole, the curtain pole. I just hang them there, and then I have a fan that's just blowing through the room. So yeah, and I have some like odor control buckets of some kind that I usually place out around them, so it doesn't smell so much. But yeah, it works pretty good actually. So it's very minimalistic, But what can you do?
And so do you do a wet trim or a dry trim?
I always dry trim actually. I always dry trim. I just take the bigger leaves off first before I hang them up to dry. So it gets a little bit better aeration between the plants and the stems. So they don't touch each other and stuff like that. And then when they're dry, usually just 5-6 days, I think then they're pretty good. And then usually the same process, putting them in glass containers, starting the other process with curing.
Let's get deeper into curing. So you're putting them into glass containers. What size containers are you working with, and are you doing any of the burping process? A common process that's used.
Yeah, of course. How many liters are there? I think they're around 1.8 liters. I have a mason jar containers with extra lid on top that I usually use. Glass containers always. And after 6 days, before I've cut them down and trimming the buds, after 6 days I put them down in the containers, and then every day I open them for at least an hour first week, and then I close the lid again, and then the second week I do it less frequently and just feel the buds, see how they react to your curing process. Just smell them, look for eventual mold and stuff like that. And if you feel that they're pretty, moist still, maybe you should keep the lid off for longer. So it's up to each and every one to just feel the flowers and see how they react to your curing process. And so it's hard to give a recommendation, but I just go on feeling, basically. See, feel, smell, see how they react.
Are you eventually packaging up and selling locally, or are you growing for yourself?
Yeah, I mostly grow for myself, and some friends, can get something if they want. But I don't, sell like big scale. It's just for me myself. Some people take a beer to relax, and I can take something before I go to bed to calm down. Sometimes if you have a stressful life, like a lot of us do, with work and family and stuff. So it's just a relaxation for me.
It's definitely relaxing, that is for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we went through just about everything there in a nutshell. I did want to ask you, for those that are looking to implement stealth growing, whether it be a nosy neighbor that they want to hide it from, a friend, family member, do you have any general advice for them?
I think you should first of all, like read a little bit about it on the internet before you start something. Get some knowledge before. Be pretty cautious where you buy the stuff that you need to do this, and don't say anything to anyone if you're gonna do this the way I do it. Don't tell anyone, not your friends, no one. Just keep it for yourself. Do it in your own spare time, and don't overcomplicate things and buy a ton of fertilizers from different brands who just want to sell you stuff to make money. Try to keep it simple. Buy something from a well-established brand that knows work. Read a little bit about the company and stuff like that, and scout the location and everything like that beforehand, a couple of months before. Look people around. Are they walking? Are a lot of people around your site? Houses? Can you get easy access to the growing space that you choose outside, or do you have to take your car there and stuff like that? So try to keep it as close to you as possible. minimalistic and be cautious. Of course, that's the most important thing, you know.
All right, lots of advice there. So wrapping things up, any final words that you have before we end this podcast?
Just want to say thank you for letting me into the podcast. It's been a pleasure, and hope everything. Hope everyone is growing some good stuff out there, of course. And if anyone wants to have any, or if anyone had any questions, they can just mail me. You can put my mail down in the description if you want, or whatever. Just say hi. You know, I'm happy to help if anyone has any questions about this style of growing. So.
Well, Macki, thanks for coming on. This has definitely been insightful. Something new, something different from what we've had on the podcast before. Thank you for reaching out to me and suggesting this as a topic, and your willingness to come on and talk to us about what you do. You know, stealth growing, guerrilla growing, whatever you want to call it.
My pleasure.
If you enjoyed this episode, click that thumbs up button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Every single weekend I'm releasing a new Garden Talk episode, and I'd love for you to tune into future episodes. Macki, once again, thank you so much, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well, man.
Peace out, everyone.